Hey, Sip and Talkers, welcome back for another deep dive. You know me, I love scrolling through YouTube, and this week I stumbled across something that really got me thinking.
Oh, yeah. What was it? Another one of those unboxing videos you love so much.
Huh? Not this time. It was one of Leonard's videos, and it was all about Chinese companies claiming to have self-developed all this amazing technology, particularly robots.
Oh, yeah, I've seen some of his stuff. He's really good at making complex topics easy to understand.
Exactly. And this one definitely sparked some debate.
Speaking of staying up late, did you see that viral video of that robot dog, like, falling down the stairs?
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
It was so funny.
Hilarious.
It's like it just totally forgot how to dog.
Yeah, but you know what's interesting is that that video kind of got me thinking about this whole thing with China and their independently developed robots.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, they look really similar to ones we've already seen, you know?
That's a really good point. And actually, that's what we're going to be looking at today in this deep dive, this whole idea of when the West open sources, China independently develops. We've got some pretty cool articles and even a YouTube video by Leonard that goes into, China's copying or, like, imitation practices. And
Leonard's video.
Under all that humor, though, there's a serious question that's worth asking, like, are they really innovating in the robotics field, or are they just copying what's already out there?
That's a really good question. And, I have to say I'm a little torn because on the one hand, you have to admire their ambition.
Mm-hmm.
They've become like the world's biggest consumer of robots. They actually have over half of all the installed units globally. Mm-hmm. And according to the Electronic Commerce Times, they're going to be leading the world in robotics patents by 2024. Those are some serious numbers.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. They're definitely investing a lot in robotics. And Nuanu actually reported that China is planning to dominate global manufacturing of humanoid robots by 2027.
Wow.
They're going all in on this. But it's not just about the numbers, though. The government's really promoting this whole robotic revolution with a bunch of subsidies and even initiatives like this Robot Plus Action Plan. Have you heard of that?
Wait, Robot Plus Action Plan? What is that?
Basically, it's a plan to get robots integrated into, like, every industry you can think of, manufacturing, agriculture, healthcare, entertainment even.
Wow.
The government sees this as, like, the answer to a lot of their economic problems, especially with their population, shrinking and getting older.
Oh, so it's basically robots are filling in the spots where there aren't enough workers.
Exactly. They have to find new ways to stay on top of manufacturing and keep their economy growing. And they think robots are a big part of that.
I see. So they need the robots.
They do. But let's go back to what you were saying before about imitation, because Leonard's video shows all these examples of robots in China that look almost exactly like designs from companies like Boston Dynamics in the U.S. They're known for their really advanced robots.
And Leonard presents some pretty compelling evidence. Like, he highlights this company called UBTech Robotics, which developed a humanoid robot called Walker X. They were making some seriously bold claims about it being China's first commercially available humanoid robot, with over 1,600 patents and completely independent development.
Wow.
Walker X even had cameos on state TV and met with Taiwan's leader. Talk about a PR blitz.
They went all out. It sounds like they were really trying to position Walker X as like a symbol of China's technological power.
Totally.
Yeah.
But here's where things get interesting. Leonard did some digging and discovered that UBTech had partnered with a U.S.-based design firm called Spec Design.
Okay. And what was Spec Design's role?
Oh, much more than just aesthetics. Spec Design was responsible for some of Walker X's core functions, like walking, climbing stairs, and maintaining balance.
All the things that make a humanoid robot? Well, humanoid.
Exactly.
Hold on. So UBTech is claiming self-development, but they relied on an American company for the essential technology. That's a bit shady, don't you think?
Exactly. And neither company was particularly transparent about their collaboration, which raises some serious questions about the validity of those self-developed claims.
Yeah, it definitely makes you wonder how much of China's supposed technological dominance is built on genuine innovation versus, clever adaptation and a bit of smoke and mirrors.
And this isn't an isolated incident. Leonard goes on to highlight several other Chinese companies employing similar tactics. It's almost like there's this unspoken pressure to present a certain image of technological independence, even if it means stretching the truth a little.
Maybe it's about national pride.
Yeah.
Boosting China's image on the global stage.
I think it's a mix of both. On one hand, you have this historical context of China feeling technologically inferior to the West, so there's this strong desire to prove they can innovate on their own. But on the other hand, you also have this intense global competition for technological supremacy, and claiming self-development can be a powerful marketing tool.
Yeah, that's a good point. But jokes aside, these mishaps do highlight an important point. Building truly sophisticated robots is incredibly complex.
Right.
It's not just about copying a design. It requires a deep understanding of engineering, programming, and problem solving.
Isn't like all innovation based on something that came before it?
Mm-hmm.
Even the first iPhone wasn't totally original. They took ideas from other technologies and put them together in a new way.
You're right. There's no innovation that just appears out of nowhere. But there's a difference between being inspired by something and straight up copying. And Leonard's video shows some cases that are pretty obvious, like there's this Walker X robot. It's a humanoid robot they sell, and it used a lot of help from this American design company, Spec Design, to make it. But when it came out, they said it was a totally independently developed Chinese creation.
That's a little misleading, isn't it? But maybe they just thought, hey, that's a good design. We can do it better.
Maybe, but then you have robots like the H1 robot, and it kept messing up during these public demos.
Oh, yeah.
So it makes you wonder if they're really as advanced as they say they are.
Yeah, that's true.
And then there's the A1 robot dog, which looks a lot like the Boston Dynamics.
Yeah, the A1, it's like Spot's less cool cousin.
Right.
But didn't the Chinese company say that the A1's special because it has an electric drive system?
That's what they said, but Leonard pointed out that even if the drive system is different, the whole design and what it does is super similar, and that this keeps happening with all these Chinese robots. They always try to downplay or just deny that they're using technology from other countries or even open source projects.
Okay, so let's talk about open source. What does that mean when we're talking about robots?
Basically, it means that the designs, the software, and sometimes even the hardware parts are free for anyone to use, change, and share. So it helps people in the robotics world work together and make things faster.
Okay.
But in China, it seems like they take these open source things, build on them, and then say, hey, this is all ours. We did it.
So it's like taking someone's recipe, adding some salt, and then say, you invented a whole new dish.
Exactly.
So funny.
And it brings up some tricky questions about like stealing ideas and who owns what.
Yeah, that's true. It's not really fair.
Not really.
You know, this whole independent development thing,
Yeah.
It started to sound kind of fake.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if it's always a bad thing. I mean, if they're making technology cheaper and easier for people to get, isn't that good for everyone?
That's a good point. And it's definitely something to think about. It could help a lot of industries and people if they could get access to this technology. But I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that?
I think part of me really likes how efficient they are and how they just want to get things done fast. It's like they're saying, hey, we see what you're doing over there and we're going to do it too, but even faster and better.
Yeah.
But then again, I can see how that could stop real innovation from happening in the long run if you're always trying to catch up. You're not really pushing the limits of what's possible, are you?
That's a great point. You're right. It's all about finding that balance, isn't it? Between moving quickly and taking the time to do something really groundbreaking. Like they can make things quickly, but are they really pushing the limits? If all they do is copy other people's work, then who's going to come up with the really new ideas?
Does claiming self-development, even if it's not entirely true, actually convince people that China is a technological powerhouse?
It's hard to say for sure. I mean, on one hand, it might resonate with a domestic audience, an audience that's eager to believe in China's rise to power. But on the other hand, this lack of transparency could backfire.
How so?
Well, if these companies are constantly overstating their capabilities, it creates this bubble of hype that's bound to burst eventually.
Right.
Imagine a scenario where a supposedly self-developed technology fails spectacularly on the world stage.
Oh, yeah.
That could really damage China's reputation as a tech innovator.
That's a good point. It's like building a house of cards.
Yeah.
It might look impressive for a while, but one strong gust of wind could send it all tumbling down.
Exactly. And, you know, there are genuine concerns about whether this focus on self-development could stifle true creativity and innovation.
Right.
If you're too focused on proving you can do everything on your own, you might miss out on the benefits of collaboration and knowledge sharing. That's what we have to think about when we look at China's long-term goals for robotics.
It's like taking a shortcut. You get there faster, but you miss out on all the cool stuff along the way.
Exactly.
And you know what? Maybe they are mostly copying for now, but they're doing a pretty good job of it.
Oh, yeah. They're good at it.
And they're definitely serious about this.
They are. In fact, by 2025, they want to control the entire world's supply of robot parts.
Wow.
And like we said before, they're aiming to be the top manufacturer of humanoid robots by 2027.
Those are some big goals.
They are.
It makes you wonder how they're going to do all of that, especially if they're not really doing much original research.
Well, this seems like they have a few tricks up their sleeve.
Like what?
First of all, they're really good at manufacturing things.
Right. They're like the kings of making stuff.
Exactly. They can make a ton of stuff really quickly and keep the costs down, which makes their products cheaper than everyone else's. It's a strategy that's worked really well for them in other industries. You know, they're known as the world's factory.
Oh, yeah, totally. I can't even remember the last time I bought something that wasn't at least partly made in China.
I know, right?
But do you think that same approach is going to work for robots? It's not just about making a lot of them. It's about having the best technology, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. Can they go from being the world's factory to being the world's robotics lab? And this is where the second part of their strategy comes in government support. We talked about it a little bit before, but it's important to understand just how much the Chinese government is behind this whole robot revolution. They're giving tons of money, making it easier for companies to operate, and even setting up special zones just for robotics development.
So it's not just companies doing their own thing. The government is like their cheerleader.
Exactly. It's a whole team effort.
That's pretty cool. But does all that support actually lead to real innovation? Can you really force people to be creative?
You're right. Just because the government wants something to happen doesn't mean it will. True innovation usually comes from people and companies being able to try new things, take risks, and even fail sometimes without someone breathing down their necks.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
You need space to be creative, but isn't China known for being kind of controlling? Is it really possible to compete with places like Silicon Valley? That's where all the tech geniuses go, right?
It's tough for sure. Silicon Valley is still a really attractive place for people in tech. It's not just about the money, it's the whole vibe, the connections you make, the environment that supports new ideas and taking risks.
Yeah, it's like if you want to be a famous musician, you go to Nashville. If you want to be a tech superstar, you go to Silicon Valley. So how is China going to create that same kind of energy? Can they build their own Silicon Valley?
They're trying, that's for sure. They're investing in top universities, building fancy labs, and creating spaces for tech startups to grow. But the biggest challenge might be their culture.
How so?
Well, Chinese culture has always valued following the rules and avoiding risks, which isn't really how innovation happens. You need people who are willing to think differently, challenge the way things are done, and try things that might not work.
Yeah, you need those rule breakers.
You do, and it's hard to change those deeply ingrained cultural habits. But you know what they say, Rome wasn't built in a day. It's going to be really interesting to see how all of this unfolds. Will China be able to create a new generation of innovators who aren't afraid to push the boundaries? I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, it's like a big experiment.
It is.
You know, all this talk about robots and innovation is making me think about the bigger picture. What does China's rise in robotics really mean for the rest of the world? Like, should we be worried or excited?
That's a great question, and it's something we need to think about carefully. China's growing power in robotics has the potential to change things in a lot of ways. So let's start with the economic side of things.
Okay, give it to me straight. What kind of economic earthquake are we talking about here?
Well, imagine a world where China isn't just making our stuff, but they're also making the robots that make our stuff. That would give them a huge advantage in global trade. It could affect how much things cost, how things get shipped, and even jobs all over the world.
Wow, that's kind of scary. It's one thing to be making our clothes and phones. If they're controlling the robots that make those things, that's a whole new level of power.
You're right. It's a big deal, and it's something that people in charge of economies and countries are watching very closely. But there's also the geopolitical side of things to consider.
Okay, now we're getting into some serious spy movie stuff. What are the risks of China becoming a robotics superpower? Are we talking about a robot army taking over the world?
Haha, let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Okay.
But it's true that robots are becoming more and more common in the military all over the world. You have drones, unmanned vehicles, and even AI systems that can gather information and make decisions. So as China invests more in robotics, it's pretty likely that some of that technology will end up in their military too.
So it's like a robot arms race. Everyone's trying to build the best robots, not just to sell more stuff, but also to have a stronger military.
In a way, yes. And this brings up a lot of ethical questions and security concerns that we need to address, like how do we make sure that these powerful technologies are used for good and not for bad? What can we do to prevent accidents or people using them for the wrong reasons?
Wow, this is getting heavy. So it's not just about whether China is copying or innovating. It's about what their rise in robotics means for everyone in terms of money and security.
Exactly. It's a big picture issue.
And it's happening right now.
It is.
This brings us back to something you mentioned earlier. What does all of this mean for regular people? Should we be freaking out about Chinese robots taking over the world?
Haha. I don't think we need to panic just yet.
Okay, good.
But it's definitely smart to stay informed about what's going on and to think about the ethical and social implications of robots and artificial intelligence. We need to be having these conversations now before things get out of control.
Right. It's better to be prepared.
It is, but on a more practical level, what can we do as individuals to get ready for a future where robots are everywhere?
Yeah, that's a good question. Any advice for our listeners?
I would say the most important thing is to be adaptable. The jobs of the future might be totally different from the jobs we have today, so be willing to learn new things and explore new career paths.
So basically, don't be afraid of change.
Exactly. Be curious, keep learning, and be ready to try new things.
Got to be like a chameleon.
Exactly. And I think it's also important to be a critical thinker. We're going to be bombarded with so much information about robots, AI, and new technologies. It's going to be really important to be able to tell what's true and what's not, to analyze information carefully and form your own opinions.
So we need to become like robot whisperers.
Haha.
Not like we can control them or anything, but like we can understand them, their strengths and their weaknesses.
Exactly. Robot whisperers. That's what we need to be.
I love it.
And part of being a robot whisperer is staying informed. Read articles, watch documentaries, listen to podcasts like this one, and talk to people about the ethical and social implications of robots. The more we understand about these technologies, the better we'll be able to deal with the changes they bring.
I totally agree. And you know, all this talk about robots in the future is making me think we should do a whole separate deep dive on the ethics of AI. What do you think?
I think that's a great idea. There are so many interesting questions to explore, like how do we make sure that AI is developed and used in a responsible way? How do we prevent bias and discrimination in algorithms? What does AI mean for privacy and security? It's definitely a topic that deserves its own deep dive.
Awesome. Let's add that to our list of future episodes. But for now, I think it's time to wrap things up. This has been a really interesting conversation, and I hope our listeners have learned something new and maybe even had a few laughs along the way.
It's been great talking about all of this with you and everyone listening.
Thanks for joining us.
Of course.
And remember, the future of robotics is happening right now, and we all have a part in shaping it.
Well said.
Big thanks to Leonard for inspiring this whole conversation with his hilarious YouTube video. Make sure to check out his channel for more awesome content. And speaking of YouTube, if you're looking for some travel tips, tasty drinks, and fun unboxing videos, make sure to subscribe to Mickytolife.
Yeah, Mickey's channel is great. You should definitely subscribe.
All right, Sip and Talkers, that's all for today. Stay curious, stay informed, and until next time, keep sipping.